Welcome back to the Punch channel. Today is Sunday, 1 February 2026, but on the map we are looking at 1200 hours, 27 May 1942. This is the tank cemetery scenario, and I may have mentioned before that it is part of Armored Knights Case Blue, Don Bend. It is by Groanyard Simulations, and we are fighting. This is part of the Fall Blau campaign, more specifically part of sort of a preliminary part of the Battle of Kalach. And we have a Soviet counterattack by the 28th Tank Corps and the 131st Rifle Division, supported by the 158th Independent Tank Brigade. The 158th is subordinated as of the start of day interphase, so it can operate in concert, join up and attack and defend and so on, without penalty with the 131st. For the Germans, we have the 3rd Motorized, elements of the 3rd Motorized Division and elements of 60th Motorized Division. So, situation. We'll back these out for a bit. Situation is that the Soviets at the end of last turn, I'm going to reconfigure for a moment. We'll take these guys out of the picture, and this is more or less the configuration at the end of last turn. We'd had an interesting situation in which, I'll back up further here. I want to say something along these lines. Yeah, that seems about right. We'd had a configuration like this at the beginning of the last Soviet turn, in which we had a suppressed stack of units here, and the units were able to move forward, Zoc to Zoc, through a zone of control, and then able to move again. They had enough movement points to do so. So one of the, I'll call it a peculiarity of the Armored Knights Case Blue system, is that there are no movement effects for suppressed units. So with that in mind, I made that move. And I have to say, thinking back on it, that is gamey as heck. Gamey as hell. I'm going to restore the configuration here. It's gamey as hell, right? I don't think really that, given the opportunity to make such a move again, I won't make it. In fact, I think for my table, I don't think I will play that way, period. I don't think it should be allowed to do a Zoc to Zoc movement or a movement forward by a suppressed unit. I don't really think that that is a, I think that is a bad thing. So I'll probably just send off a note to the game designers and ask them their opinion on this. But my recommendation would be, don't allow it, because, you know, it's there. You can do it. It's legal, but it's gamey. Is it realistic? I don't think so. These are 2.5 kilometer hexes, so that does somewhat mitigate. At the end of the day, I'm just going with it, right? I'm not going to be gamey in return. So consider, I've got the situation where, oh, and he's no longer suppressed at the end of his prior turn. So the situation further, from a game perspective, is that this is a victory points-based game. Okay, and let's talk about those victory points. The victory points are based off of, my recommendation is come back and pause, you know, freeze frame or whatever if you need or screenshot or something like that. Or, of course, you could look on your own copy of Armored Knights Case Blue, Don Bend. Get them while they're hot. It's a good game. I am really enjoying the heck out of this game. It's just got some, I'm coming to grip with the game system, right? Coming to grips with it. So the Soviets, you earn victory points through casualties. The Soviets get, the Germans are going to get 1 victory point for blue or red and 2 victory points per yellow, right? That's armor. The Soviets are going to earn 3 victory points blue and red and 6 victory points per armor. And then you get these locational things, okay? And we'll make note of those. Then you do a ratio of the Soviets and the Germans, right? So you generally want to hold even victory points or better is going to give you some kind of victory for the Germans. Anything else, and it's varying levels, varying degrees of victory for the Soviets. Okay, straightforward. So the problem is that if left unattended, right, in their defense, they were left unattended. We'll pull these guys back. In this situation, if this was left to stand, they could immediately move, let's see, they'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 with truck movement because of the Balka. And then they're on the road, 5. Sukhanovsky's worth 20 victory points. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ostanovka's worth another 20 victory points. So instantly they reverse the odds here. We go from 43 victory points, which the Germans have, 43 to 12. You see the magnified effect of those armor unit losses from a couple of turns ago. You go from a very decisive German victory, and it looks decisive, doesn't it, right? In football terms, we've got time of possession and yardage and everything, and we've got points on the board. And by the way, yeah, they'd have to drop the armor unit here, but you could even go further down the line, 1, 2, towards Verkhny Golubaya from Ostanovka. You could do all of this in one turn, right, and get 40 victory points immediately. Now the Germans could come back, run a unit up there, and retake. So, but we get into a very mobile phase. And that's increasingly difficult for the Germans when they're in low supply. So let me describe what the heck I did here. Now, I could be gamey and I could say, well, let's run up some token units, right? I can run one company. I can run one company and sacrifice that company. Why? Because under most normal circumstances, they can only advance into the hex of combat. Now, with high enough odds and a good enough die roll, and for experienced troops, they can get additional hexes, right? But who's to say I don't have another unit sitting there, and so on, right? Of course, they're getting points as they do this. This would be 6 points, and so on. So it tends to argue against the gaminess of it all. Right, and we wound up here, I believe, and here. Who has infantry? Oh, right, these guys are here. These guys are here. So I'm choosing not to be gamey in response to the gamey thing that I did with the suppressed units. But again, like I said, I won't do that again. I don't think that is necessarily appropriate. But the game designers, if we get into a correspondence, maybe they can convince me otherwise. But I really think that if you're suppressed, you don't get to go forward, and you don't get to go Zok to Zok. So I don't think that move would have been allowed. That would put the Soviets back here, which means I only had to deal with one more hex, right? Which is the kind of problem that I'd had much of the game. It's a much more tractable problem for the Germans. Now, I put most of the 3rd Motorized Division units in combat supply, which allowed me to do the moves. I've really thinned out the line down here. That's going to be difficult, but for now, we're steady. So as far as the move is concerned, the movement is over with. Everything except for all the 3rd Motorized Division units except for this engineer unit and this stack with heavy weapons and an anti-tank unit, they were all put into combat supply, and they will be for the rest of the game. And of course, the 60th motorized units with the blue band on them, they remain out of supply and subject to various negative combat effects. All right. So what are we doing offensively? Are we doing any attacks with these wonderful in-supply combat units? Not so much. Not so much. Not really. So no ground combat. We're just going to hold what we got, right? But we are going to fly some air. So up here, we have a grand total of 5 air units that are available to us at the moment. okay, and they are all fatigue 2. Okay, that's very significant. What that means is they get to fly once. That's it. One sortie each. I've got 5 sorties of air. That's it for the end of the game. 3 turns. That's not a whole lot of air. Right. Oh, in case I didn't mention it, the artillery units for 3rd Motorized are in supply, which means that they are firing at full strength. Right. So back to air. I'm going to use 2 of my Stukas. Now the question is, where would I like to use them, right? Suggestions would be this stack is fairly big, this stack is fairly big. I mean, they're tall, but they're also, I happen to know they're fairly big stacks. So with, let's see, with Fog of War, I can't really unstack the units. I can unstack them when I need to know the combat factors for the attack. But so here, here, and here. And let's just put down some markers. Alrighty. Here. I only want to use 3 units. I want to hold one of those. I want to hold one of the Stukas, and I want to hold these 2 units here. It's a Heinkel, which is fairly stout, right? 13 combat factors. And then I got this HS-123. It's an old 1930s era high-wing monoplane, but they use it for scouting and coordination, and it can carry a bomb load, right? I think it was originally intended as such, and it was used as such here. But this combined versus the Stukas, it's rather weak, and I need to keep these guys together to form a single attack. That's going to give me 2 attacks, one with Stukas, one with not Stukas. All right. I think these guys are sorted for the moment because I've got strong defensive units in the area. So no attack there. I will attack here and here. Let's just put them nearby. So let's execute these attacks. I'm now going to determine what the stacks look like. I need that for the artillery air unit density modifier table. 3, 6, 8, 9, 10. And Stukas get to count hard units. So I have a stack of 10, which is good because, and they are in Balka. Now it's interesting. Balkas don't count here, right? I don't know if that's an oversight. So I have to treat this as clear, right? There's no mention of Balka here. So a stream Balka, that's this, it's kind of like a drainage ditch, a small canyon, an arroyo, right? Gully type of thing. That's very characteristic of the steppes that we're fighting this simulated battle over. And they're very significant. They're mentioned in all the literature as, you know, you can hide out in there and providing concealment and quite a bit of cover at times. And so it's reflected here, but it's not reflected in this. So I'm going to treat this as clear, which the hex otherwise is. And we have 10 units. That means that I'm at a 1.5 modifier, which is what I was hoping for. Why? Because this is a Stuka, and the 12 becomes an 18. And Stukas compare, when they're doing a ground attack run, they compare against a hex-based value of 16. So this gives me a 1-to-1 attack. All right. So 1-to-1 attack. I'm going to roll air mission success. And I have a 5. And that is a successful attack. Now I need to roll flak. Do we have flak in the area? None here and none there. Flak is not in effect. I need to move that pesky flak unit up. Both of them. Oversight on my part last turn as the Soviets. Unintentional, I assure you. So we are doing a straight up 1-to-1 odds attack, which is going to basically give me about, this is the row here, it's going to give me about a 50-50 chance or better. 1, 2, 3, 4. 40% chance of knocking these guys back, or suppressing them rather. So dice on the way, 8. Elite 8, 1-1. 1R. That's not bad. He has to take a 1 hex retreat. 1 hex retreat and lose a step, so he will lose a step of infantry. Okay. And blue. It's interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. You can't use the lost tracks in combination with the actual casualties. Some of these casualties are duplicating what's in the lost track, right? You actually have to look on the board for the various counters to actually determine what's going on. So, for example, I've got another 4. I'm actually at 47 victory points with that stack. Now, he's going to take a retreat here. And that was very successful. Okay, and that was what we had there. And I think we've got a few other casualties here and there. So let's unpack this one. We'll come off to the side for this exercise. We're going to do the Stuka against that hex, against these units. And that was a very inauspicious yeah, that's about what I recall. All right, 8, 9. These are 9 in the clear. So only times 1. That's bad. Okay, well, we are at a 0.5-1. We'll roll air mission success is a 4. That is successful. Is there any flak in the area? Not here. And not there. Not there. No flak in effect. So the air mission goes forward, and we will drop the dice. 8 on a 0.5-1 elite. So elite, 0.5-1, and we lucked into our hoped-for suppression. So he takes a 1, yay, and we'll take the infantry unit. Again, we wind up with that same situation where we don't know what's quite happening here. And the remaining set is in place, but suppressed. And that is a very, very happy result. All right. So a whole lot of talking here, but I might actually do a second video and try and fit it in the 3-minute format. How about I do that? I'm going to post this up. And I'm going to do a second video in the 3-minute format, the short format, and y'all tell me which one you like better, if you will, in the comments. And let's see what happens. Right. So that's the end of the turn. And the Germans, again, are holding. They're having to work increasingly hard and thin out their line. And the Soviets are up next, and they are going to... by the way, their artillery should be reset for this. So that's what we've got going on. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video. Again, watch this video if you will. It's YouTube, right? I'm not really asking for numbers. I am asking, however, for a qualitative comparison. Compare this video versus the 3-minute short that I'm about to do, and I will drop both of them. And let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like the short form? Do you like the long form? I got a little long-winded here talking about the various rules and interpretations here. So that's it. The other thing that I didn't mention here is communication effects. So one, like Columbo said, one last question. So let's zoom back in. So you'll note that in this location at Kachalinskaya. Yeah, Kachalinskaya. We have the headquarters for the 28th Tank Corps. And I believe that should be visible on video. It is a 6, just to make sure. It's a 6. That is the range of command for this guy. for the headquarters unit. And there is also the supply battalion, same difference. While I have you on the phone, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I looked at the rule book, and there are command and supply check requirements, right? So if you find yourself out of command or out of supply, you get an out of command, out of supply marker. Do I happen to have any close at hand? Yes, no, maybe. Interesting. Where did my markers go? No. Huh. One of my marker sets is missing. So that is unexpected and not the sort of thing that I was looking for. So let's come on down and find counter mix. That's a good start. That's a better start. There we go. Okay. So I'll punch a couple more counters, and we will continue with this exercise. Right. So I haven't had to dip too far into the counter mix so far for markers, which is fortunate. All right. So let's talk about out of supply and out of communication. And it turns out you can be both out of supply and out of communication, right? So you get one of these counters if you have the appropriate degraded state, as they call it, referred to it in the rules. So the interesting thing is that you only check, per the rules, we're back to the rule book here. This, by the way, this is an alternate draft of the rule book. This is a homebrew thing I've been working on to give it a 2-column format, clean things up a bit, and have a few more graphics in place. But it's unauthorized at this time. Okay, so looking at the rules, and I realize I'm going long in this video, but I think it's worth talking about. You check during the start of day interface. That's the only time that you check, and that's the only time, per the rules, that you can go out of communication or out of supply. It's interesting. Now, on subsequent turns, you can regain in communication or in supply. And that's interesting, that that during the game you can't, during the turns outside of the start of day interface, you can't lose communication or lose supply. And there are quite a number of effects. You can't get artillery, you can't get air, you can't move within 3 hexes of the enemy unit. If you're within 3, any movement must be away from the enemy units. You suffer a minus on route recovery attempts. You can't get military intelligence or leader points either. So you can't attack unless you're pocketed. So it's a very interesting situation in the rules. But this guy is not out of communication, even though he is beyond that range. So that's another thing that I'm going to ask about. Is it possible to become out of communication and out of supply at a later turn during the day outside of the start of day interface? I think I can imagine why they only put the check in the start of day interface, and that's for simplicity's sake. I suppose the idea would be that, okay, you fueled up and re-ammoed, right? And you got your class 3, your class 5 all squared away, and so on. Presumably at the start of the day, and you're basically running with that. It kind of leaves off, what if you need to rearm and refuel later in the day, which could be a thing. So I'm going to try and make that argument. It's a little bit more checking, but so many games will have you check turn to turn for this sort of thing. And of course, the current rules allow you to come back into communication that way, or to come back into communication that way, which I'm certain to do, right? But it did allow an in the moment moment of vulnerability here as he exceeded his movement. So, fun thing. All right. So I have come to the end of everything that I can possibly imagine talking about in this particular video. Again, the Germans have extended their lines. They went into combat supply for 3rd Motorized, which got them most of the units. They had Stuka attacks here, which caused a 1-hex retreat, and here, which caused a suppression, and they got two steps of infantry casualties as well for their trouble. So, but the Soviets are threatening. If they break out, they should fairly easily win, but we will see. For now, the Germans are holding. Thanks very much. Again, compare this video, if you will, versus the 3-minute video, and I'll make reference back to this video in that one, and let me know what you think. It's a lot easier for me to go the 3 minutes, but I can go a lot more in depth, meandering though it may be. And so that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Likes and comments, and go 49th, and we will see you down the road.